I'm Julianne Puente, head of school at Albuquerque Academy in New Mexico. The Academy is a leader in the world of independent schools. We honor our past while embracing the future of education. Even though I've been going to school in one shape or form for almost my entire life, I still learn something new every day. And I use that knowledge to tackle the challenges that should interest anyone who has a stake in the future we can't fully imagine. Thanks for joining me to hear about what I learned in school. Hello and welcome to What I Learned in School, a podcast from Albuquerque Academy where we reflect on education, values, and the experiences that shape us. I'm Julianne Puente, head of school, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Claudia Mora, class of 76. Until her recent retirement, Claudia was the dean of the Jackson School of Geosciences at the University of Texas at Austin, a position she began in 2020. A distinguished geoscientist and academic leader, she previously served as deputy division leader of the chemistry division at Los Alamos National Laboratory and earlier chaired the geology department at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Her work in stable isotope geochemistry has helped scientists better understand Earth's past climates and environmental systems. As an undergraduate at the University of New Mexico, a field mapping trip with her older sister sparked a fascination with how landscapes reveal the Earth's history. That experience set her on a path that led her to a master's degree from Rice University and a PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in 1988. Throughout her career, Mora has been passionate about building environments where great science can thrive. Welcome, Claudia. And it is an honor and a thrill to get to speak to you. So not only are you part of the first cohort of girls here, I love talking to scientists.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that'll be a trip.
Yeah. So why don't you just take us back a little bit? Do you recall the first time you came to the Academy and what drew you to it?
I do. I really wanted to come to the Academy badly. My older brother graduated here in 1970. So he had already been there, and my little brother was at the Academy. And I was so unsatisfied, so dissatisfied with what I was getting in the public schools. I really wanted to come. I knew the value of the education, and I really wanted to take part in it. It turns out I was delayed a year in doing that because my father didn't believe that girls needed the advantage of a private school education.
Right.
And so I took a year to pester and pound on him and argue and generally make his life miserable until he agreed to let me come here. And so when I arrived, I was here because I really, really, really wanted to be here.
And so where were you coming from?
I was at Highland High School for 10th grade.
So you came here in 11th grade.
I came in 11th grade, but I joined the cohort of girls who were the first ones here.
Got it.
So if you want to talk to someone who was here day one, that's not me.
Claudia, I will tell you, it's amazing. There are two things I find hilarious at doing this. Everybody has planted the trees that are on the path, even though they're like 50 years old. I've heard from the class of 2018, oh, of course we planted the trees. And also, most women say, or men, we were in the first class that girls came in. It spans over a decate. So I just say
really
yes
was.
to everything. And that's what they also say. I know that you were on that. So what was 11th grade like? And how did you find the teachers? And, do you recall that time?
I do. As I said, I was very unhappy at Highland. I did well. It wasn't a matter of, was there something there that I wanted to study? It was just a fairly cold environment.
Right.
The teachers didn't really know the students. The students never talked to the teachers.
Right.
So it was like learning in a vacuum. Mm-hmm. And what I really needed and what I really wanted was attention.
Right.
Pay attention to me. Pay attention to me. I'm also number 4 of 5 children in a baby boomer family.
Right.
And so if you know anything about history, baby boomer parents were not particularly helicopter parents.
No.
In fact, they let their kids out the door in the morning and said, come back before dark. And they didn't care what we did as long as we didn't get in trouble.
Right.
And as number 4, number two was the one who was expected to raise me. I mean, they were not going to spend a lot of time on that. So I just wanted feedback. I wanted attention.
Right.
I wanted to learn and be challenged, but I wanted that kind of feedback on how I was doing and how I could do better.
So how
and
were
that's
your
what I
years?
got immediately here.
Right. And so what were those years like? Do you remember the teachers, assignments, the dynamics
I
of the
remember all of the
classes?
teachers, and I remember a lot of my assignments.
Right.
The teachers were great. Mr. Slevin,
Right.
Mr. Pennington,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McCannon, Mr. Barney, Mr. Batchelor, Mr. Gardenhire. Unfortunately, you can't ask him now how I was as a
Right,
student, and
right.
that's a darn good thing because I was a terrible student in his class, but Mr. Porter. So I remembered all of the teachers.
Uh-huh.
And what I can say about them was 201 of them, they read what I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did we have to write all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They read what I wrote. They read what everyone in class wrote.
Right.
And they opined on it.
Mm-hmm.
And they corrected it.
Right.
And they pushed you to do something different or better or think about something differently. So there was a lot of feedback here that was really good for my intellectual growth.
Mhm.
And so I really loved it. I was already then an old swimmer, a past swimmer, past my prime swimmer, but I got to swim here on the team with Dave
Nice.
Barney, and the teacher-student
Right.
relationship I like was oftentimes very much like a coach-athlete relationship, and I had one of those. Well, I had both of those with Dave Barney, and so I just really thrived. I'm really glad that I fought for the right to be here,
Mm-hmm.
I did well here.
Yeah. What were the science classes like, and
Ooh.
where did that passion for science come from?
It didn't come from my time at the academy.
Yeah, that's it. So go for it.
No, I was not a scientist by nature.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to write. I wanted to do something artistic or
Right.
like writing. I loved to write and poetry and things like that. In 11th grade, when you came in from the public schools, you were already behind by 2 years, the math and science
Mhm.
series. And so I wasn't that far behind in math, but it turns out I took chemistry with Mr. Porter in 11th grade
Right.
with 8th grade boys.
Ugh.
And they had never had a girl in their class before.
Right.
And
Because
I
8th
have
grade
to see-
boys are known for their maturity.
yeah, and they displayed it all the time. And 11th grade girls are known for being accepting of 8th grade boys and their maturity. And so it was a very weird class.
Mm-hmm.
My lab partner was not an 8th grader. It was a 12th grader who was a science and math whiz who just somehow forgot to take Mr. Porter's class. And we didn't do science the same way.
Right.
He did it on his calculator, and I did it by experiment. And
Right.
so, no, it was a challenge. I took it. I took science. I just it wasn't what I excelled at, and
Mhm.
I took math.
Mm-hmm.
12th grade, I had another argument with my parents, and I decided that I wouldn't I would not excel in calculus so that I could get back at them. Don't ask. That's how
Right.
you think when you're
Right.
17.
Right.
And I remember making a deal with Mr. Gardenhire that if I could get a B on the fall semester final, he'd let me drop and go to Mr. Gage's class. And
Huh.
he did. I did, because
Huh.
the problem wasn't
Right.
my
Right.
brain,
Right.
it
Right.
was just not wanting to.
Right.
So I did not develop my science proclivities here.
So, how did you, or where
Just
did you?
before I went off to school, which
Mhm.
it turned out to be at the university near Mom, just down the road,
Mm-hmm.
I went out with my sister, my older sister. She's 4 years older than I. And she was a geology student at the time, and she was mapping out a project out on Canjilon Hill,
Mhm.
that pancake-shaped thing over in Santa Ana, Pueblo. And I did not pay any attention to what she did during the day. I was catching lizards and things. But at the end of the day, she showed me her map, and she explained to me what she
Right.
saw and what she interpreted. And I was so fascinated that she could wander around making measurements and looking at things and then show me a three-dimensional picture of what she had seen based on her observations and what she inferred about the history.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like a wonderful puzzle, really fascinating. And I decided I would take that as my lab science. You always needed to have one lab science in college.
Okay.
And I did. And it turns out that that's what I liked the most. So that's what I became a major in. It really, I just kind of flipped.
Right.
And said, this is what I like to do most. I was by then thinking about what am I going to do to make a living. It seemed to me like geologists were better able to support themselves than poets. I was right.
Just to toggle a little bit. So recently, I was just asked by a student at a 1012 assembly, why. So right now, like the signups in our science department are the highest in the whole school. It's closer to like 1,500. We have about 1,200 students. So people are doubling. They're doing that. All of these. Some of that comes from the semester classes, but it's by far the most. And she asked, "Why do we need humanities? Why can't we just take STEM?" And I provided an answer, but I think you're more uniquely qualified to offer an opinion on it as someone who loved poetry and loved writing. And how did you see that help you as a scientist? That's a leading question, I know, but
actually, I believe I'm as good a scientist as I am because I learned how to write and read and think differently.
And talk to people.
And talk to people. And talk to people. First of all, when you're a scientist and you have the ability to write well, you just get all kinds of advantages accrue to you, right? You can write proposals, you can write papers, you can write. So I wrote a lot all throughout my career. But more to the point, think about it. We were writing in English in Mr. Slevin's class. We were writing for Giles Pennington in the humanities. We were reading and writing in history. And we were doing all of these simultaneously. And I think that's when you begin to understand sometimes the connections between these different disciplines and fields, and one runs into the other. The human condition runs into itself across all of these fields, across every field, and you develop a thinking pattern or a thinking habit of making those connections between apparently disparate fields, and if I was known for anything as a geoscientist, and I'm not a famous geoscientist by any stretch of the imagination, it was for putting together disparate pieces of information and creating a new path of science that people could follow. So the way I describe it is your science skills you have as bricks, all the skills you have. And at that time, most people built their scientific careers by putting one brick on top of it, being very vertical but somewhat narrow. You became the lone wolf, best of your kind in X or Y. And I excelled by putting them side by side. I had a very wide wall, but it was only one brick high or one or two bricks high. But
I think you're underselling.
It's because I could put, but it put me in a position where I would see a connection between what I was doing, what someone else was doing, and we said, well, let's get together and think about this together. And that's what made me a good scientist, was that ability to piece information and to look at things and to just think about them. I was not trained to think about it, X, Y, Z. I came at it differently. I was known to hold my math in soft focus because I thought it was kind of pretty, with all the integral signs and stuff like that. But it's just it's a different way of thinking. I was not rigid, and I was always looking for different things to read or different things to learn about.
Thank you for
It's the breadth.
Yeah.
It's the breadth. So that's what I would. I mean, I know a lot of people who all are doing science. In fact, a lot of the universities these days. I think this is what further they education is so expensive these days that people want you in and out in 4 years. And they want to know that whatever you study, you're going to be able to make money the minute you get out.
Right.
That's a terrible way to learn things. And it really drives people into a very narrow route really early in their college process. And in fact, now many people come out of high school already in these very defined areas of study. And it might make them very good initially at what they do, but the world changes and opportunities change and jobs change and information comes out. And suddenly, if you're really narrow, you don't know how to adapt. You don't know how to flex. And so I just think stay broad when you stay
so
broad.
The next question to me is it's really asking for myself on this. So, and for others, I'd say. But from your vantage point from higher education, what are things independent schools or schools like the Academy should be thinking about to prepare kids in the next 10, 20, 30 years?
I think it's just as I said, make sure people aren't allowed to get too narrowly focused in one area or one discipline, because the best way to think is to think across fields and to understand connections across fields. And I'm just thinking about all the students who loved computers, and they came in, they worked and they coded in high school before anyone even knew what coding was, and they went on and they became computer scientists. And you could get a job out of college in computer science anywhere you wanted. 6 jobs walking out the door until 2 years ago. And now they're having trouble getting jobs. Because AI is here.
And guess where they're applying? Here.
I can believe it.
I know.
But this is just it. When you get too narrow, you stop thinking about opportunities. You stop seeing opportunities and interesting things that are at the periphery that, in fact, may be where everything is going to turn in a month or a year. And so I just encourage people to keep the education as broad as possible. People are going to get pinned down really fast in college. So let them learn broadly here and learn how to think here and write. They have to know how to write.
I love it. I always find this kind of question odd, especially asking women who have hit the leadership CEO type role. But what are some barriers? Did you encounter any of resistance, barriers, things you had to overcome? And when you did you have any of the skills that you acquired during your time at the Academy? Did that help in that, being from the first cohort of girls that were here? The first, people make a big deal of the first, right? For me,
it's been 50 years since I was graduated.
But I get this too. They're like, how does it feel to be the first female or Latina or whatever? And I never thought about that when I was here, but then it matters to other people. So I'm like, oh, this does matter. It may not shake or shape how I'm approaching my job, but being cognizant of that. So I'm basically asking you the same thing, which I wouldn't know how to really answer.
Well, I mean, I just told you that I faced a barrier in just getting here.
Right.
And that, ironically, that came right from my family, right? My
dad
was educated and loved me, but he just didn't see the world that way, and but that persistence learned in gnawing at someone's ankles for a year in order to achieve something. Sometimes it's mental calories, sometimes it's just physical, was really important to me. But when I got here, I felt I had a lot of value here. I felt I had value. I felt the girls all had, everyone was given value because, as I said, the teachers would know what you wrote in your paper, and they would know what everyone in the class wrote on their papers. And to me, that was a sign that they were valuing you as a person and valuing your intellect and how you were learning. And so if nothing else, I got a sense of, I was valued. And
Got it.
I was valued, and I got an education like a boy gets.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I left here, I didn't feel that I had experienced that. So I didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't find myself lacking compared to the boys. I was competitive intellectually with them. There was nothing, we were different. Some of them were better in some things and I was better in others, but I didn't feel outclassed or I wasn't inherently worse than they were.
Right.
And so when I went on, it didn't matter what I did. I never felt somewhere between the persistence of pushing on something and just knowing I could learn something. I never felt when I jumped into geology that, oh, well, you were not a scientist, so you're going to fail at this. No, I just jumped in because I knew I could learn.
Right.
And so I never had that issue. And I think to a great extent for girls in many schools now, many high schools have equal opportunity for science. And half of our students in geoscience are girls, and half of our graduate students are young women, more than half. So the barriers in many respects have been knocked down there. Where they persist is just driven by economic strata in the poor school districts, in poor schools. There's not the opportunity yet. They don't have the teachers or the infrastructure to support a science and math education. But where you really start seeing the barriers again then is when you become a professional.
Right.
So in our academic system, in the university systems, in our most industries, in this country, we really aren't very good. We don't have a good system of support for women who are working full time as they decide to have families. Right. It's just a mess. It was a mess when I was having children. It's a mess now still too. There's still it's very clunky still to take time off. You invariably lose position when you take time off. You lose some respect. You lose some opportunities that you may never get again. And so I think it's just very difficult for women to stay in a lot of the science and engineering jobs are high pressure jobs. They're in industries where it's go, or in academia, and it's I think you choose at some point that you just can't do it all. So it's I think most women are still in the position where they have to say, yeah, I'm going to have children. I came to terms with this. I'm going to have children, which means I'm just not going to write as many papers. Right. And I'm not going to be as successful as that person or that person because I still want to go home and spend time with my family. Yeah. But I'm not going to give up the opportunity to work, to stay at home.
So you were a mom, a scientist, an academic, and then a leader of a major institution. So you go through this. This is a little bit of a curveball, but not really. What did you wish people understood about managing a major endowment, or how endowments work, and that they didn't? I think people just think, oh, you have this amount of money, you could just pull it.
Oh no! See, that's what. You're asking someone. I was as dean of the Jackson School. The Jackson School was formed as the result of the single largest gift ever given to the University of Texas system. It was $225 million when it was given, and it's grown to about 350. Probably another $75 million that came in as cash. And we have 150 million other endowments. So I was leading a school that had $500 million endowments. And so people would say, why on earth why do I have to give you any money? Because you already have everything you need. But they don't know. They don't understand how endowments work. The first thing, an endowment is a corpus of funds that you don't spend.
Right.
The reason it's supposed to be there forever. It's supposed to generate
Right.
funds for you forever.
Intergenerational equity.
And so,
yeah.
yes, and it's lovely that way, but that means the payout on your endowment is about 4.5% a year.
Right.
Because you need to grow it a little
Mhm.
bit so it keeps up with inflation.
Sure.
And so $1 million endowment only generates $45,000 a year, $45,000 a year, which at my school was not enough to support one graduate student
Right.
for one year.
Right.
We had 200 graduate students.
Right.
And so the math for my $500 million endowment,
Mm-hmm.
the math was we got about $20 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start taking away the costs of actually being a school.
Right.
And the operational costs and the salaries and this and that. And it's remarkably funny. It's remarkable how fast that money goes away.
Yeah.
And so what people don't so people first have to understand that it's you can't spend that money. You can only spend the payout.
Right.
And that payout has to remain small enough so that you keep growing it. And the second thing, but everything you do in academia, everything you do in education costs money. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah.
Everything costs money. Students, there is an unlimited number of students who need support for
Yeah.
tuition. The need for tuition support is vast.
You're talking.
The
I
need,
understand.
the need for and what endowment gives you is it's where you get the opportunity to do everything but turn on the lights.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else comes out of your endowment, right?
Mhm.
Or is supported that way. And so, you want to have a good faculty, you have to be able to recruit them
Mm-hmm.
and maintain them. So you have to pay your faculty, and they have to have the opportunity to have resources in their
Mhm.
classroom to make their teaching better,
Right.
and to be able to continue to grow themselves
Right.
intellectually, to attend conferences or
Right.
workshops where they learn new things. And students, every single thing that students do, every opportunity they have costs something.
Right.
So,
So, what messages inspired people to give?
I think people
Asking for a friend.
No, yeah. Oh, I know. I don't think you'll get people to. Philanthropy is something you learn, first of all. So you have to start teaching people when they're students.
Yeah.
You have to start educating every student who ever benefits from someone else's dollar, and that is every student in the academy, every single one. Because even if they pay full tuition,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
nowhere close to the cost of what
Right.
it actually means to put them in
Everyone
school.
has a
Yeah.
$7,000
Well, and
subsidy.
they need to know this. And so, and they need to realize that money comes from somebody who, it's not all Sims money.
Mhm.
It's not all, it wasn't even all Jackson money for us. It was countless people who have
Right.
given money over time.
Right.
And so they have to understand, it wasn't Bill Gates who gave all the money. Somebody who doesn't, is not going to miss it.
Right.
It's somebody who, of middle income or not extraordinary means, who said, yeah, I remember what I got
Mhm.
and how important it was, and I'm going to pay it forward.
Right.
And you have to start that by getting students to understand what they're getting, and by having them write letters. It doesn't matter if it's to the person who gave them the dollar that they're spending. They have to write letters to somebody who gave money,
Right.
so that they can appreciate that they weren't just given this education or worthy of this education and don't need to thank somebody for it. I think it's really important that people recognize their privilege. And then the way you can do that is by bringing, I've never had any success unless I brought people back.
Right.
You bring people back into the where they're either with peers, like alumni events, and they're remembering, hey, do you remember when? And they're remembering, and they start to remember how, and it helps them understand how formative the school was to their lives.
Yeah.
Or you bring them back to interact with a current student. Because again, when donors meet, or potential donors meet alumni, meet current students, they see themselves. They're going to see this bright kid who's very active, very enthusiastic. Usually we sit there going, geez, kid's got a lot smarter since I went to school. and they have a lot more, they have access to things, but you recognize yourself in them, and you recognize how much your learning meant to your life eventually. And you see that and you appreciate it in the kids, and that's what inspires people to give. I think the cold asks never, you can ask endlessly and nobody ever brings it in, unless you can get them talking about. So a lot of it is sending someone out to meet someone personally and get them talking about their experience,
and then getting them onto
campus. That's what we did.
And that's what we do here.
Yeah.
So what, from one school leader to another, what advice do you offer me about stewarding an important institution long term? What would you say I should be doing?
What a thing to ask.
A good way.
I can, yes, I appreciate it. Well, I could say speak softly and carry a big stick. That's the easy way.
Right.
But as you know, that doesn't work. Education, I think, is the most chaotic of all industries, of all businesses, of all environments. Because you have teachers with strong intellects, and you have students, each of them having a strong or a personality and a brain of their own that is only forming. And so you have to value each and every, you have to value those differences. You can't set everyone in lockstep because they're cats. There's no lockstep in education. There's no lockstep at school. You can't get everyone marching in the same direction. You can't get them to march. And if you get them to march, they're not going to go in the same direction.
Right.
So you have to be happy creating an environment where they can all march around in whatever direction and to whatever tune they're marching. But they have a common ethos. So you just have to try to create the ethos that guides their choices, the ethos of learning, the ethos of respect, and other, of the human spirit, whatever you want to call it. You just have to, if they can respect the difference in how other people are thinking, and if they can respect the value of what they're teaching or the value of what that student's doing versus that student, but everyone sees the important thing is that we're learning, that we're good people, we're becoming good people, we're becoming good thinkers, then you succeed, because then no matter what people are doing, there's some basic movement towards something that you're trying to do. But I think that's the best you can do. I don't think you can, you have to have a real stomach for chaos.
Yes. Well,
so there you go. That's my experience.
I absolutely concur. And I think the other fallacy is that there's equality or equity in schools, and like everyone has to have the same job.
Oh, absolutely not.
But which I'm like, no, teaching 7th grade history is different than teaching 11th grade history. We value them the same, but for here about supervision or grading versus recommendations and others, like, our days are different.
An 11th grader, like I said, I took chemistry with 8th graders. They do not think like 11th graders.
Right.
And I have I had graduate students and I had freshmen in my school, and they're very different. And you have to value the people who are actually going to spend time with the freshmen, getting them to learn just how to function on a college campus. That's important enough. And the people who spend their time doing that are no less valuable than the scientists who are working, on their $100 million DOE project with their PhD students.
Right.
It's you're building something different. You're just trying to build learning, and that's such a vague thought for most people. But everybody has to work at the level that they're. You have to meet the students at the level they're at to move them along. So, I have faculty who teach I had faculty who would teach the 100 level lectures, the freshman lectures, and faculty who they would only go into a graduate class. They were not going to teach undergraduates because
right.
And you know what? I didn't want some of them to teach undergraduates because they didn't understand how to connect with them.
Right.
So, you do what you can.
Well, Claudia, thank you so much. I mean, I find that our conversation is far more a lesson in mentorship to me, and I'm grateful and love talking with you. Is there anything you wanted to touch upon that we didn't?
I did want to tell one story about the value of an endowment and how, because like I said, because everything costs money.
Yes.
So whether it's the endowment bought a computer program that's going to allow someone to visualize their data, or it is bought the beaker that allowed them to make measurements.
Right.
Everything that students do that helps them learn costs money. So we had a student, a freshman, who came in a couple of years ago, and she was a student from West Texas. She grew up on the border and very little experience or very little ability to get together with science and mathematicians. And but she liked science. She liked geoscience. She thought she liked environment, so she would go to the geology school. And somewhere along the line in her first semester, she was reading about methane and how important it was as a greenhouse gas. And she saw there was a professor who worked on methane. So she just kind of reached out to the professor and said, what can you tell me about this?
Right.
And they met a few times, and he had an enormous project going on methane hydrates in the Gulf. It was that $100 million DOE project that had been going on for 10 years with 5 schools. And you think about everything that went into that project, hundreds of millions from the governments, managing 5 different schools. The university actually managed to get permitted to drill in the Deepwater Gulf. The only university's ever managed to do that twice. And he said, we're going to do this study. Why don't you come along? So endowment funds were able to support her to participate, to get the training, to learn how to, to battle helicopters if she needed to, and what she was going to do. And she spent 2 weeks on a drill rig in the Deepwater Gulf as an undergraduate, as a freshman, with watching the science team, the technical teams doing all their work, and watching the drilling teams doing all their work and participating. They made her take her classes while she was there, and they would grade it and put it up on the refrigerator, just like you do at school.
I love it.
But that experience just so completely got her hooked and connected to science. She's not working in that area now, but she's one of the best students we have. 4 years later, she's one of the best students we have. And so it didn't cost that much to send her out there, but it did cost something.
Right. Of course it does.
And so, it does. Well, people forget. No. Everything you do.
They think tuition assistance is free.
Everything you do costs money.
Right.
But putting her in that environment, giving her that it's the opportunity that the money buys. It just and they have to take advantage of it. But getting her there changed her life.
Right.
And so I just want people to think about it changes people's lives when they can do something that they otherwise can't do.
Right.
So it's really important. I believe in giving. You hear that? I believe in giving.
I hear. Well, thank you so much.
It was really good to talk to you. Thank you.
It's time for the teacher feature, when you get to meet one of the fantastic faculty members at the Academy. Today, we're highlighting someone who knows Albuquerque Academy as a student, a parent, and as a faculty member. Katie Dolan, class of 1994, is one of our English teachers, and her roots here run deep. As a student, Katie was a member of the swim team and actively involved in community service. 2 experiences that really reflect what Academy life is all about: commitment, connection, and showing up for something bigger than yourself. And now she's come full circle. As an English teacher, Katie brings that same energy into her classroom every day, helping students to find their voice, think deeply, and engage with ideas that matter. Katie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, Katie, why don't you talk a little bit about your history with the Academy? Do you remember your first time coming to campus? Do you remember your admissions process? Do you remember any of the conversations at the dining room table with your parents? Anything like that?
Sadly, I remember the admissions process pretty clearly. I remember sitting in my friend Tate's family's blue Oldsmobile to drive here to take the test. And we sat in Sims and took an entrance exam that was a Scantron.
Mm-hmm.
And my most vivid memory was getting to the very last question on one of the sections, which was question 100, and bubbling in 99.
Oh, no. That will,
So,
right?
Learned that lesson. Fortunately, they called my parents and said, we think something went wrong here within like the first 3 questions. I must have skipped one early on, and they gave me a second chance. But
Thank God.
think at the time
So the Academy had a heart?
They did, of course. Still has a heart.
Right.
And so I think I wondered if it was the right place for me. So I had a real fear initially that I wasn't cut out to be here. I remember that about the admissions process.
Huh. And do you remember 6th grade?
I do.
And so what do you recall, like, coming to campus? I mean, Christine Lenhart was in your class.
She
Leah
was.
Armstrong was in your class, or she was
a little younger. Yeah. I think.
Oh, she's 90. I thought she was 94 on that. But okay. Yeah. So what do you remember? Do you remember Bacalini?
I do. I never got to have him, and I wanted him because my older sister had him. But we had a wild science teacher named Jamie Otis. Have you ever heard of Mr. Otis?
I have not.
He's currently, I'm not sure if he's still in this position, but he became a head of school in Ecuador, I think. I might be wrong. But anyway, he was a very wild, very young, like in his 20s, science teacher who was so much fun and did all kinds of things that now would not fly. Like he was be teaching us lab safety, and he was carrying a beaker of water, but he said it was hydrochloric acid, and he was like, you have to be really careful. And then he would pretend to trip and throw it on us. So we all loved him, actually. And he had our attention every day. I remember that about 6th grade.
And, what do you, when you think back to your days as a student at the Academy, and having worked at where I attended as well, I have a hard time actually remembering the student part from my early teaching part. Like it's just a big giant blur. But what are some any teachers or distinct memories or points of learning or growth that still resonate with you as you're around the campus?
For sure. I mean, Cindy Moore was a great mentor to me. I had her as a freshman, and she, I think, was probably the first person to say, "You're a good writer." Right. And sadly, I think that I have always had this seed of doubt in my head of just, goes back to the admissions test, right? Like, am I cut out to be in this place? And so voices like hers that were so supportive and encouraging and
did you have
nurturing.
Stephanie?
I never got to have Stephanie, unfortunately. I didn't. But Cindy, she really was the teacher that made me want to be an English teacher.
Right. And so you found your voice a little bit here. And then what happened after you graduated? Like, take us from the time that you graduated to how you came back.
Well, I think I was one of those students, my best friend from 6th through 12th grade here went on to Harvard, and she knew she was going to Harvard, and she was applying to all of the Ivies. So as I was getting ready to graduate, again, that loud inner critic in my head was sort of shouting, good luck. Like, let's see if you can go anywhere. And that had nothing to do with the school, I don't think. I just compared myself instead of to myself, to other people. And so I was surprised that I got into the schools I got into. I went off to Santa Clara University and majored in English. Again, still that Cindy's support was loud in my mind. And in my first year, I sort of went, how did these people get in here? Like, they can't write. Right. And it wasn't until I was away from this place that I realized how great my education had been and how incredibly strong it was, especially in the humanities and in writing. And I became an English major, continued writing. I studied abroad my junior year. I went to Spain. And actually, I wanted to double major in Spanish, and my real love of the language started here as well, with Mike Linsol in the 6th grade, and then Tony Esquivel. I had him more than once, so encouraging and really made me fall in love with the language and made me realize how much knowing a second language broadens your worldview and opens your heart in so many different ways. And so that started at the Academy for sure. And then I studied abroad in Madrid for a semester my junior year, came back to Santa Clara and finished early somehow. And I got a writing internship in Silicon Valley my senior year, and my first account was Steve Jobs, actually. Wow. And I was writing, they were launching the iMac, and I had no interest in technology, but I could write. And so it was Apple was our client, and then John McAfee, who was doing Virus Scan at the time, and he had just started a chat software. So I was sort of writing press releases and arranging interviews and doing public relations. And that wound up being my first real career. And I did that for maybe 5 years. And then I looked around and said, this is not feeding my soul in the way that I want it to. It was a great career. But I just said, I think I want to teach. It was a weird pivot.
And so did you come right back to the Academy? Was that your first teaching gig, or did you teach someplace else?
Well, I knew that I didn't want to teach in any school that wasn't like the place that that made me love learning. But I also knew I had no experience. That just seemed really strange. I had an English degree, but my husband, we weren't married at the time, but we were living in San Diego, and we had moved down there and decided we both wanted to make career changes. So I applied to get my master's in secondary ed with a focus in language literacy and sociocultural studies. And I enrolled in that program at UNM, and I loved it. And when it came time to do my student teaching, I called Cindy Moore and I said, want to go have coffee? And you can help me, give me some tips. And she said, you need to come talk to Stephanie Lipkowitz right now. And the door kind of opened to cover a maternity leave, and I've never left.
So what? Well, I'd love to. I mean, I didn't know any of that. It's really pretty cool. But how did I'd love to hear like two real, and they're different, about your path here teaching and what you learned more about writing and a love of literature and what you wanted your students to have. And then what was the experience of the Academy as a parent of 3 Chargers?
Yeah. I think both the commonality between those experiences is, as a teacher, I have been able to invest in my students in the way that my children have been invested in as students. This is the place that made me want to be a teacher. And I think the most important thing has been, to me, hoping to instill in my students the knowledge that writing is thinking, and that their own very distinctive voices are valid and totally unique. And I feel like my children, just sort of being able to try to nurture the whole child, and get to know them.
Yeah. When we talk about writing, and inevitably AI comes into this thing, but when you say that, that they have a voice and they have something to say, the other thing I talk about with kids is like, if this were easy, well, I don't know if you're putting your heart and soul into it. Like, if you really write something, it should be hard to do, and that you're a little vulnerable in that space, no matter if it's a thank you note or an essay or a eulogy or a speech for convocation, that you should feel vulnerable. And that was tough.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to hear from like a master teacher how you approach writing with kids at various age, because how you write in 6th grade or 9th grade or 12th grade, it is very different.
Totally.
Right.
Totally.
But how do you approach that with your kids?
I think my starting point is always silence your inner critic. As you know, mine is loud.
Right.
So nothing's going to come out perfectly the first time. So just let that all go and just put pen to paper. And I have gone back to writing things by hand,
your
believe it or not.
Journaling, right?
Yeah. And I've had so many kids tell me that they like it, actually. And I'm sure there are plenty who don't. But silence your inner critic and know that it's not going to come out perfectly the first time, but you need to have something to work with and just let your thoughts come without filtering them, knowing that writing is a process. I think that's something that I just have to reiterate. But the greatest joy is when you silence that critic, you get something produced that is maybe a total mess. Then you go through and look for the little gems, right? Pull out the gems. Oh, here's where I got warmed up. Here's where I start getting to the point. Oh, look at that sentence. That's great, right? Let's start with that. And hopefully you get them to a product at the end where, I tell the kids that one thing I love about teaching writing is reading something or hearing a student read it, where like I still get that feeling where my hair stands up on my arms, and they have this moment of, I made that.
Right.
It wasn't easy. It took me a while to figure out what I wanted to say. It really took me a while to find that perfect word, even. But when they do it, and there's that sense of pride and distinction of communication that is like uniquely theirs and also right? If it's rooted in the text, or I love seeing students get to that point where they can have that sense of pride and hopefully along the way only compare themselves to themselves. Hey, look at where you started. Look at what you produced.
What about literacy in terms of reading? Again, I think that has also changed in this, I was just actually talking about this today, that there are some of us here still that feel like reading is only certain kinds of books and we should be doing it this way. And I just have I do think long form podcasts or audiobooks or magazine articles and it's about celebrating learning as not just reading. And learning how to read is a skill unto itself. So how is your approach to literacy maybe evolved or changed? And how do you develop that love of learning in your students, and not simply a love of reading, which I understand this is controversial at this school, just saying that. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think as a community, we love learning. Kids, adults, I think that is common ground. What that looks like varies, and we need to accept that, But I think in terms of reading and in terms of literacy, it's definitely changing. It's funny that you should ask me that. I'm teaching George Orwell's 1984. I think a few of us do it each year with our 9th graders, and I've done it for many years, and I love teaching that text for a number of reasons. It is truly an academic read, and I think it's important for our students to recognize that there is a distinction between reading for pleasure and academic reading.
in the greatest scenario, they're going to find pleasure in what they read all the time.
And there's crossover.
There is crossover, but it's a challenging text, and it's a beautifully written text. And I think from a perspective of nurturing literacy, Orwell's writing is beautiful. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's clear, it's nuanced, it's he uses rich vocabulary, so it ticks a lot of the boxes, but it's hard. And I have, in the past 10 years, had to shorten my reading assignments because reading's just not happening as much as usual. So there are a couple of ways that I encourage kids to still say, I can tackle this text. I can do this. We start reading aloud. Just today, we were reading along with an audio to listen. It helps to hear a skilled reader read it out loud. I also want them reading along on the page so that they're learning annotation skills. So it's not, I don't try to ignore the technology and the tools that we have available to us to help with that.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
And I think ultimately being literate and especially reading literature, one of the best things about it is that it nurtures our sense of empathy. And we're storytelling humans are storytelling animals. And so I think if they can hear a story and if it can still open their heart or their mind and unlock something within them, I can't say, hey, that's any different from reading it on the page. But I do want them reading along. So we kind of do both. And I try to encourage in the students, I think when they get into it and when you set class time aside, our longer blocks have allowed us to do this, to read in class. Hey, there are no phones. Your dog's not barking. Your kid's sister's not screaming, whatever. There are no distractions. Let's read for a minute. And it's surprising what can happen when you set aside that time and you say, let's read. They do it and they read. And I think they still get something out of it.
Right. Yeah, I absolutely, I agree. You were talking about authors. Like I remember in 9th grade reading Old Man and the Sea, and Hemingway's writing was like, I felt like I could understand it. And even, I always loved his writing. There was just a kind of simplicity and accessibility to it and an elegance that even, I remember you get older and you read, the density of certain authors. I'll just leave it there. Yeah. And you lose like the story because you're trying to figure out what they're trying to say.
Absolutely.
And that kind of struggle too. Yeah. And I think kids think we never struggled with literature. I'm like, oh my gosh, all of the time. All the time.
Yep.
And I'm rather write like Hemingway and have it be understood. And I wish I could write like him, but that precision of being able to be like, no, this is what the sentence is saying. So, and that is, till today, I probably do more writing as an adult than I did as a student.
Right.
But I'm like, is this sentence really conveying exactly what I want it to convey? And you can only get that if somebody else reads it and talks to you about it. And I think they're getting all that practice in the classes, when we're like, no, you need to read this out loud. You need to share, you need to edit, you need to talk about this.
Yeah. Read it out loud. We had a discussion in class today. I just sort of started with, we did some reading last night. It's hard. What are you wondering about? Right. What wasn't clear? And I had a student, they read 20 pages of 1984. It's really hard.
Right.
And she raised her hand and said, I have a question about this one sentence. And it was one of those moments as a teacher where I had to calm myself down because the kids laugh at me. I'm like, I am so excited. The fact that you have a single sentence.
Right.
Like, talk about close reading.
Right.
And she said, we have been working with his vocabulary a lot because it's dense and we need to along the way. And she said, there's this sentence where Winston, the protagonist, is sitting with someone who he works with.
And he says that he knows the guy who's sitting with him either despite, the sentence said, he despised and even slightly disliked Winston. And the student said, that sentence makes no sense. It says he despised him and even slightly disliked him. I said, yeah, what are you noticing about this sentence? She said, well, it seems really redundant.
Right.
And the funny thing is, in this conversation in the text, Winston and his peer are talking about the destruction of language and taking words out of the dictionary. I said, why do we think about this sentence? All the kids are nodding, and they said, well, to despise someone means to hate someone. And so he's just saying he hated him and even sort of hated him. I said, well, let's look at that. Let's look up a definition of that word, to despise. And we wound up having this great discussion about how nuanced language is. We think it just means this one thing, but it could also, another element of that definition is that it's negligible. Like you almost just don't even care. So it could go from being almost indifferent to also slightly hating them. So I said, in this one sentence that you've pointed out, Orwell is proving his point.
Right.
That we have to have the vocabulary to express the complexity of our thoughts and the nuance of our thoughts. And I love that text for what it teaches the kids.
Right. If anyone needed any further example of the magic of the Academy classrooms, I mean, I don't know what more they can want than this one that was just like happenstance that we fell upon in our conversation today. So, all right. It's a little part of our show that we call lightning round.
Oh, no. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
As a lifelong New Mexican.
Okay.
Roadrunners or coyotes?
Coyotes.
Desert or mountains?
Mountains.
Red or green?
Both.
Your Christmas?
Yes.
So when I came and the day before I interviewed, I came a day early. And I'd never been in Albuquerque. And so I walked to this little breakfast place and I order, and they said, red, green, or Christmas. And I said, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And I think I got Christmas the first time and then fell in love with chopped green.
Oh, good.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Yeah. If you could assign one book that every single person at the Academy should read, what do you think it would be?
Oh, my goodness. That is not a fair question.
I agree with you. That's a tough one.
Oh, one book that everyone should read.
I don't know the answer to that question either. I mean, there's so many.
I guess I would say there are too many. 1984 is on my mind.
Right.
I think about books that leave you thinking and leave you questioning your world and also leave you feeling empowered to make it better. Hopefully. Well, and to care.
Yeah. I would cheat and say probably an anthology.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, which is not
right.
Like I loved American short stories.
Oh, yeah.
And they're still that I love The New Yorker just for that reason and that you can still pick that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I still do. It's my favorite. So I'm less of a novel person, and I think that's what people, when they say what book should everybody read, that it would be that.
Well, and I couldn't say just one because I think so much of it, I think of my daughter who just is about to graduate, reading Nietzsche and Aristotle and really coming home and asking me, what do you think is the good life? What do you think constitutes the good life?
Right.
And I would never say just read Nietzsche or just read Aristotle or just read Lao Tzu. So, a single book that's hard.
What's amazing is they come out of that humanities class. I teach world religions and they'll bring this right in and vice versa. And I'm like, well, what does it mean to be a good person? What is the purpose of life? Is that another way of looking at these questions? And then they, what's the difference and similarities between religion and philosophy and faith? And where does this all begin to intersect? And watching them wrestle with these questions, particularly, looking at it from 53.
Right.
I'm like, there aren't black and white answers, kids.
Right. But
or there isn't even like, what is the truth in this will change over time for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Anyway.
But like you asked me earlier about my experience as a parent. And so having my daughter come back and asking me about this,
right.
What do you think? To have her go through that and wrestle with those questions, those huge life questions as she's turning 18 and getting ready to embrace greater independence. The fact that she was that she took humanities, that she's invited to ask these questions, to share them, to work through them with her friends and herself, and in an environment where she feels so safe and so known and so seen,
right?
Where she can ask questions, she can say what she thinks, she can wrestle with them, as you said, in a place where she feels comfortable doing so. Those communities don't just happen. Right. Without a lot of hard work.
And
intentionality. And I love it.
Last question. Where is your favorite place on campus?
Oh, probably here in the library. Like any quiet corner in the library. It just feels like home, and I'm surrounded by books. There are lots of kids. You can hear people studying and having like typical Academy kid conversations, which I always find really entertaining. I love it.
I love that our library is filled.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
And I was somebody who kind of had questioned, when we made the giant Connect 4, this little sandbox, and like, who's going to do this? All of them.
Yeah.
And then they feel welcome. They're here. They're using the space in all different kinds of ways. I love it. I love it. I agree with you. Katie, thank you so much. Hopefully more than just my mom will listen to the show.
I'm not even going to tell my mom.
Oh, she'll listen. Thank God. Now we'll have 2 listeners. I want to thank Claudia Mora for helping me explore the history of coeducation at the Academy, as well as our guest, Katie Dolan. I'm very fortunate to be part of a team that cares so deeply about education. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe and share. And as always, we'll see you next time. Go Chargers! Thanks for listening to What I Learned in School to learn a little bit about Albuquerque Academy. Send us your comments and questions to headofschool@aa.edu. You can listen to all of our episodes on our website at aa.edu and wherever you get your podcasts.